Hi, good afternoon everybody. Before I start, I just want to say you got the round of applause absolutely wrong. In deaf culture, we raise our hands like this. So this is how we give a round of applause. Excellent. So I've been asked to come along today to deliver a presentation about the experiences I've had growing up and the changes I've encountered. I've underwent a lot of transition. I was born in Ethiopia, in Africa. And in 1992, we were at the tail end of the Civil War, and my parents were granted refugee status, and we moved to Kenya. So when I was around about three, I moved to Kenya. And for the next 5 years, I wasn't really accessing any education, and I wasn't really developing a sense of identity. And my parents started to have suspicions about my ability to hear. And when they would shout me or they would try and call me, I was very unresponsive. So they thought, well, there's a possibility that there may be a difficulty with hearing, or you may be deaf. So, of course, my parents grieved this situation. They were very unsure about what was going on with me. They continued with arduous tests to determine my level of hearing, and they thought, well, is Mohamed just being a bit of a nuisance and ignoring us? Or is he in fact gradually losing his hearing? What my parents then decided to do was to have a meeting with the imam, and they tried to say a blessing from the Quran to restore whatever hearing I had. So upon this blessing, my parents said, "So Mohamed, can you hear now?" And I thought, in my infinite wisdom as a young person, I said, "Of course I can." But in actual fact, I was still gradually losing my hearing. I was then admitted to a school. It was my sister. I just want to let you know that she was born profoundly deaf. So it's not a case that she acquired hearing loss later on in life like I did. So I was admitted or enrolled into a hearing school, but it had a classroom for deaf pupils. And that was only one small classroom, so for all intents and purposes, I was educated in a mainstream environment. And we used KSL, or Kenyan Sign Language, to access the curriculum. So I was very happy I was there in the class with my sister. And then once I came to secondary school age, I was moved to a boarding school in Nairobi. And when I moved, I had one of the biggest, most significant changes in my life, because the boarding school, where all the pupils were entirely deaf, they were all sign language users. It meant I escaped an environment of being in a minority, where I was exposed to bullying, lack of awareness and understanding about my deafness, into a school where everybody was using sign language. It was beautiful. Everybody, I was surrounded with people using Kenyan Sign Language. And I mean, I'm not only talking about the pupils, the catering staff used sign language, the managers, the teachers, everybody used this language that was completely inclusive and wholly accessible to me. Regardless of what part of the school you were in, if you were walking down the corridor or you were in the classroom trying to access the curriculum, no one was using the spoken word. Everything was done in a visual communication that was entirely accessible for me. And it was really my deaf world. And it was incredible. I stayed in that school for approximately 3 years. And at the end, my family and I, we were offered an interview about the prospect of moving to the UK. And for me, I wasn't really au fait with areas in the UK. I had some degree of understanding about Liverpool, Manchester. I didn't really know about the particular way of life. But I remember distinctly when I was asked a question during this interview, they said, "Mohamed, what would you like to do if you were in fact to move to the UK?" And I thought, well, of course I want to be the president. So I thought this was wholly attainable in this new world whenever I changed. And they said, okay. That's something you can strive towards. And I remember vividly the day I arrived in the UK with my family on the 10th of December, and my jaw hit the floor. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because it was snowing. And the landscape in Kenya, as you can imagine, is entirely different. And I'd never seen snow before. And I thought, what in under goodness is this? And I thought, right, I'm going to have to try and acclimatise. I had about 10 layers on to try and, stifle out this cold, but I was still absolutely freezing. And I remember coming off the plane, just thinking, where am I? What is going on? And like I say, I'd never seen snow before. So I was seeing it, and there was this blanket of snow, and I was thinking, what is this? So I thought it was some sort of salt material. And so I thought, I won't try and eat it. I won't take the risk. But I remember touching it, and it was absolutely freezing. And bearing in mind, this was a completely new experience for me. And I saw people picking this white substance up and throwing it. And I just thought, what is going on? And then I remember being located to our house, and we had no TV or no means of entertainment. And I remember in the first few months of moving here, our family would gather around a heater in the evenings and just converse. And I remember the climate and the brightness of the snow really impacted upon my sleeping patterns, and it was just so bizarre. It took me a long time to acclimatise, because I was coming over from Kenya, and it was a complete shift in daylight hours as well. So as I say, I was gradually getting used to the UK environment or UK life over time, but I wasn't accessing any education, nor was I being exposed to the deaf community. And I had this impression that, well, maybe they'll sign similar, they'll use Kenyan Sign Language or some form of that. So when I was, after about 6 months, I remember meeting deaf people or meeting interpreters, and they were using British Sign Language. And I remember coming up against this huge communication barrier, because I only knew Kenyan Sign Language, whereas everybody here used British Sign Language. It was an entirely different language system. So the college that I was accessing later on really supported me in learning my level 1 and level 2 accreditations in British Sign Language. And over a year, my confidence started to grow and develop. I started to engage more with the community, the deaf community that is, and practicing my proficiency and developing the language a lot more. And once I gained those communication skills, my life again started to change. As I say, deafness didn't just happen to me. It gradually came about, and as a result, it impacted upon my family relationships, because I could no longer communicate effectively with my parents who are hearing. The only person who I could really have a lucid conversation with was my sister. And we're thick as thieves. We were with one another. We would be playing together. We would eat together, and we would be constantly chatting through sign language. And it was like our own secret language. So whenever our parents would see us laughing, they'd be thinking, what is going on? What are you laughing at? And it was just such an incredible opportunity for my sister and I to bond and consolidate our family relationship through this use of sign language. I do remember after moving to the UK, I was enrolled into college, and I was recommended by one of my teachers to go to the Manchester Deaf Centre, because it had an established youth group specifically for young deaf and hard of hearing people. And they do a lot of trips, they do a lot of sports, and it's all designed around the engagement of young deaf people and promoting their welfare. So I started volunteering at the Deaf Centre, and I started to establish my social networks. And that's when I was presented with the opportunity of working as a youth worker at the Deaf Centre. And as time went on, I realized I had this hidden skill or this hidden passion for working with young deaf people, engaging in activities, engaging in sports. And as time went on, I was promoted from youth worker to youth leader in the space of 3 or 4 years. So there was an incredible sense of achievement after the transitions, the extensive transitions that I underwent in my life. And it's opened up a new window of opportunity for me in terms of my career and my career prospects of working in youth work. So no longer am I interested in being the president, but I'm much more interested in doing youth leading or youth work. So that's what I always say to young deaf people. If you have any aspirations, then please do go for it. You can do anything, you can achieve anything. And just the example that I've given you of working my way up to become a youth leader, it's opened up so many opportunities for me, and it's expanded my mind in so many different ways. And it's enabled me to meet a lot of young people and see what they're capable of in their own capacity. So thank you very much for listening to me today.